Welcome to day 4. I'm Dean Miller, President and CEO of PACT, and I'm here to kick off this final hour of the 2021 Forum Conference Series, presented by Fairmount Partners and Anexanet. Once again, I'd like to give a special shout out to all of our sponsors, many of whom you'll meet throughout today's episode. In this next hour, we'll hear from a lineup of speakers on the final of our 4 variations on this year's forum theme, unlocking the value and activating the energy of data. We'll also be joined by Peter Coffey, long-standing Forum Steering Committee member and Vice President for Strategic Research at Salesforce. Peter will give us his recap of this year's forum themes and insights, and you're not going to want to miss it. And finally, we'll announce the Best in Show winner for this year's Forum Demo Pit, our steering committee's selection of top early-stage companies providing the cutting-edge innovation that enables digital disruption. You'll also meet our Demo Pit judges and learn more about the selection and judging process. Let's get started.
Hello, I'm Andrew Fegley, Vice President, Head of Digital Engagement for North America at EPAM. EPAM is one of the world's leading technology companies with a global network of over 40,000 strategists, technologists, data scientists, and consultants who are at the sharpest end of innovation and emerging technology. 50% of the Forbes 2000 list work with EPAM to deliver their future. We believe the right solutions are the ones that improve people's lives and fuel competitive advantage. We don't just create blueprints, operating models, and business plans. Our thinking lives in code, lives in products, and lives in the market. For this final session of the 2021 Forum Conference, we'll take some of the topics covered in the previous sessions and ask ourselves, how does it all come together? How do the processes of enterprise data collection, regulation, and management come together to inform enterprise strategy? And how can enterprises unlock the value of that data? In our first segment, we'll hear from Maria Villar, Head of Enterprise Data Strategy and Transformation at SAP.
I'm Maria Villar, Head of Enterprise Data Strategy and Transformation at SAP. The theme of this conference has been data as a new responsibility. And you've heard throughout the conference from practitioners and experts alike on why this is important now and what this new responsibility is. But where and how to start, especially when there is so much to do, and you know that the resources and the dollars and even the executive attention on this topic will be limited. How do you justify and explain the data investments that will be required to your company's leadership? Not only so that it will fund the initiatives, but even more important, that they'll participate in modeling the behaviors and the new responsibilities in their own actions. Well, that's where a data strategy comes in and why it's important. I've been a data practitioner for over 25 years. I've been that data leader who's been responsible for building an organization from the ground up and getting it funded and getting it supported. And what I've learned through my own success is the importance of having a data strategy. And that's why I've become a very big advocate of it. But most companies don't have a data strategy. And actually, a recent survey that was done of the leading companies and the data executives within those companies, they said that only about 30% of them have a data strategy. And oftentimes, if they have a data strategy, it's a technical data strategy. And while the technology is an important part of your strategy, and certainly we'll talk about that later, it's not the only capability that will be required to be successful. A comprehensive data strategy addresses all the data and all the capabilities that are necessary to be successful. So what are those capabilities? Well, a data strategy should identify and define and build the data processes that will be required. Those new data processes could be data processes for acquiring data, for sharing data, for creating data, and even using data. There'll be new roles and responsibilities to be defined and an accountability model in place on who does what within the data lifecycle. You'll need the change management. How do you educate and train employees on their responsibilities? Then you'll need analytics and metrics to measure and monitor the responsibilities and how those are going in your company. And of course, the data strategy has to include managing and mitigating all the new data risk. We certainly talked about that at this conference. And that includes how will you keep your data secure? How will you address the ever-increasing privacy legislation across the world? And also, how to ensure the ethical use of data. This will become especially important if your organization will have data scientists creating artificial intelligence and machine learning algorithms. You want to make sure that there are no biases in those algorithms and in the data that you need. Now, I do want to come back to technology because technology is an important consideration, especially after you've defined all of these data capabilities that must be built. Technology will help you automate those capabilities. It's almost impossible to do these tasks without technology. In addition, it'll help you automate and scale those capabilities and monitor them. Data tools and systems are also going to get a lot smarter and a lot more intelligent because software vendors are incorporating AI and ML in those tools. And by making the data task easier to use for all of the employees in your company, it's going to help with the adoption and the change management that you're going to need. And also an important consideration in technology is the technical architecture. Having a solid, integrated, comprehensive data architecture will give your company agility and speed and the ability to bring in new data types quickly. That could bring you a competitive advantage. And that brings me to another key point of the data strategy. What are the new skills that are going to be required? We talked about data scientists, data architects, possibly business data analysts. All of those requirements for new experiences and skills should be part of your data strategy and addressing where to find the skill base. So with this ever increasing set of requirements, in addition to all this new kinds of data and new kinds of data risk, how do you prioritize? How do you get started? Well, this is where having a business outcome data strategy comes in. Business outcome data strategy starts with your company's business outcomes, those outcomes that they've communicated externally or they've communicated inside of your own company through meetings or strategy documents. Those are the ones that matter most. And those business outcomes will then scope and prioritize the data that matters most to those outcomes and the capabilities that are most important to be built to address those outcomes. So what are business outcomes? So example of business outcomes could be growth outcomes. Your company has stated that they want to grow either by entering new markets or by increasing the revenue of their existing customers. How do they do that? They also could be financial outcomes, improving the cost margins or improving the total cost of ownership for IT. They could be also supply chain outcomes, improving and automating the supply chain and providing more resiliency, which was going to be evident and needed as a result of the pandemic. All of these outcomes are what I call data-rich outcomes. And it's clear that you need data in order to support and enable those outcomes, and you can't be successful without them. Those are the ones that you really want to pick for your data strategy and ensure that you address all the data requirements, all the data and all the data requirements that you need to be effective. That's what a business outcome data strategy helps you to define. And then it also keeps your executives in line and motivated and aware of what the data team's value is and why it's important. The data strategy is also a North Star, and you need that North Star in order to manage all of the different data projects that are going to be required. And in the absence of having that North Star and that data strategy, what happens is the data requirements are built in silos, and that could be ineffective, inefficient, and certainly can be done in a better way, in a more coordinated way, a reusable way. A data strategy is also a great communication vehicle. By now, you've seen that data responsibilities is going to be more than just IT and more than just your data team. It will be everyone in your organization who creates data and changes data and who uses data. So use your data strategy and your data strategy documents in order to help them understand the role they play, where they fit within that role, and why it's important to the whole company with that data strategy. So how do you want to get started? Well, I would suggest that if there's not an obvious data strategy champion in your organization, that you name one. And that data strategies champion will be responsible for working across your organization to get their input. Your business teams, your functional teams, audit, privacy, legal if necessary, and your technical teams. Identifying those outcomes that matter and the data that matters to those outcomes. One of the recommendations of that data strategy could be an organizational recommendation. An organization that will then be responsible for executing and monitoring the data strategy. What I've seen is that the best practice in data-minded organizations, they all have a data leader. And that data leader is a senior position, a permanent position, a full-time position. And one of the other reasons that you need a data leader is to keep the data strategy current. A data strategy, again, has to be focused on business outcomes. So if business outcomes changes, business priorities changes, so should the data strategy. That's another reason to have an ongoing organization. So if you don't have that data strategy experience in your company, then go get some help. You can get help through consulting organizations. You can get help with your software provider, or you could get your own help by tooling yourself up with different webinars and white papers on data strategy that are available. I have a data strategy masterclass on YouTube that you can use as well. So there's really no reason to not get started. And hopefully this session and this conference has helped you, motivated you, and given you the rationale to move forward on a data strategy and on taking that new responsibility. Thank you very much.
I'm Terry Kerwin, a partner at the law firm of Fox Rothschild. We're a proud sponsor of PACT and the PHORUM conference and have significant experience in representing clients in the technology space, including with respect to data privacy and security, IP protection, commercialization, financing, and exit events. For our final panel of this year's PHORUM conference, our lineup of established enterprise and emerging company executives will discuss how their organizations are unlocking the value and activating the energy of data. How are enterprises leveraging AI-derived tools to find patterns and make useful predictions and recommendations? And how are they enabling non-technical stakeholders to participate more directly in analyzing data and in designing and automating the experience? Let's hear how from our panelists.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining today's panel regarding unlocking the value and activating the energy of data. My name is Brian Atkis. I'm a director of applied intelligence at Anexinet. I'll be the moderator today. We've got a great panel, and I'll let them introduce themselves really quickly. Ashish.
Brian, thanks again for the opportunity to be on the panel. Ashish Shah, CEO and co-founder of Dina. We're a digital healthcare company focused on the healthcare industry's transition to virtual and home care.
And Tom?
Good morning. I'm Tom Wild, the CEO of Indico, and Indico is an intelligent automation solution for dealing with unstructured content in the enterprise. So we solve document intake, document understanding for big industries like healthcare, insurance, financial services.
Great, thanks, Tom. And Haroon?
Thanks, Brian. My name is Haroon Abu. I'm the Vice President of Digital Data and Analytics at Bell & Howell. Bell & Howell is a technology-enabled services company that services industrial equipment from automation to robotics with an install base in North America, spanning multiple OEMs. The company also delivers comprehensive solutions for retail, grocery, click and collect, automation, and production mail. Looking forward to the great conversation.
Great. Thanks, Haroon. Thanks, Tom, and thanks, Ashish. So today's panel, we're going to go over just some basic, data and analytics, activating data for an organization, and then talk a little bit more specific around predictive analytics and automation, and then a little bit about data access. So to start, we'll just talk about how, there's really just a massive amount of data that's out there, and there's endless tools that can be used. And so, Ashish, to you, how do you sort of stand out and differentiate to prospective clients? And then how can you sort of recommend organizations evaluate all the possible tools out there?
Yeah, it's a great question, Brian. For our business, obviously focused within the healthcare sector, we're uniquely positioned and differentiating by the source of the data and the insight that we're really collecting and mining at the end of the day. So our focus is, if you look back at the last 20 plus years, a lot of focus on health insurance companies and claims data and data captured within hospitals or labs. But where there isn't a lot of data that's actually been organized is really in the home. And that's data that comes from either the caregiver themselves, the person, or increasingly more and more things in and around that person within their home, whether they're connected or smart devices as such. So our differentiation is, one, getting to what's been traditionally a difficult new source of data. And then secondly, making it actionable. So it's one thing to have it, but ultimately somebody who can take a good positive action based on that data that's collected in the home is usually somebody outside of it. And that could be someone back at an insurance company, or could be within a health system like Jefferson Health in the greater Philadelphia market. And so our differentiation comes in two stages: the source of data, and then being able to make it actionable to somebody outside of that setting.
Sure. And that the actionability is certainly a key aspect of working with data, right? You can only do so much until you actually make an action, drive business decisions with it. So Tom, at Indico, you guys have a similar sort of value prop for your clients. I'd be interested to have your take on that and how to differentiate.
Yeah, that's right. Similar theme here. I think we're several years now into companies realizing that no matter what business you're in, your data is still a very important corporate asset that you have to increasingly invest in and care for. In our case, we're helping companies solve the sort of vast amount of unstructured data that flows through the enterprise, but it's still a similar playbook, right? I think the key in thinking about how to get value from your data, in our case, is we talk to customers about first enriching that data, in our case, unstructured data, turning into structure, persisting that data. There's lots of challenges in storing it and making it accessible. And then finally activating that data, which Ashish touched on as well, which is typically in the form of, what are the systems, platforms, and applications around that data that can be improved and perform better when fed, higher fidelity data, because all these platforms work really well when we feed them high fidelity data, and the opposite is true, right? If the data is noisy or dirty, they don't work very well.
Yeah, that's great. And then one of the other aspects of data is really being able to look at data and being able to leverage it as a new revenue source, right? And so I think we've got some interesting dynamics on the panel here. I think, Haroon, to sort of go to you, Bell & Howell has sort of transformed itself and been able to leverage data and analytics to provide services to companies that, sort of transformed your business model. Would you mind sort of touching on how you guys have done that and, what value you've been able to drive for clients?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, Ashish talked about the health data, consumer health data. And then Tom talked about, the real-time capture of the data. So what we do at Bell & Howell, he's a 120-year-old company. with ton of machines out there that captures a lot of machine data. So it's not what data that we have, but it's what actionable, what action we can take based on the data. So when we talk about business value of analytics, IoT or digitization in general to Bell and Howell, we focus on two key areas. One is intrinsic, that's intrinsic business value, and the other one is extrinsic value. So as I mentioned, we are a services first company with nearly 1,000 field technicians in North America. So intrinsic value for us is gained by increasing the efficiency of our field service organization. Its operational efficiencies, its first time fix rate, higher percentage of calls resolved remotely, reduce troubleshooting time, or optimizing our spare parts and so on, right? On the other hand, extrinsic value is the value that we gain by using the data for monetization, using real-time insights so that we can help our customers run their businesses better. So the analytics platform that we built using real-time event streaming, which is basically streaming machine logs from these industrial equipment, IoT and machine learning algorithms to support our remote 360 product, which is basically 24/7, 365 remote monitoring, along with remote capabilities and predictive dispatch. So it's a good example of an analytics product, of a digital product that adds both intrinsic value and extrinsic value. Intrinsic meaning that it adds to the bottom line so that we can increase our efficiency without linearly adding headcount, as well as it generates top line, which is new revenue streams.
Yeah, and that's great. And I think it's an interesting sort of how Bell and Howell has been able to, like you said, 120-year-old company been able to transform using data. And then I think on the opposite end of the spectrum, Ashish, for Dina, you sort of started with, how can we leverage data and build a business around data and optimizing it and activating it for companies. So would you mind sort of going through your journey and how you guys got started?
Yeah, I think there's actually interestingly some neat parallels to Haroon's business. When you think about the field technicians that are out there servicing their customer base, we think about a lot of the folks that we organize in terms of home care, folks who operate within the home care continuum as really a large distributed workforce. So there's a logistics component to our business, but at a high level, our goal is to really increase healthy days at home. It started with seniors, those who were in the 65 plus bracket, and then it eventually moved to those who were a little bit more vulnerable and who were having challenges accessing care. And then with COVID, sort of, everyone became isolated and had challenges accessing the healthcare system. So our focus is really on really driving that increasing healthy days at home. So in order to execute on a vision like that, we have a couple components here that we need to focus on. First is when you think about the value creation, it's how do we drive down the total cost of care? So there's a lot of alternative ways to deliver care. It's not everything doesn't rely on an emergency department visit, which has unfortunately been the norm for a very long time. That's been driving a lot of the cost and challenges that we have in the US in particular. So we use data and our home care network to really identify people who could benefit from interventions that may be non-medical in nature. Could be nutrition, could be transport, could be added therapy, but there's a couple of different components to it. So one, to understand the needs, where is that person located, and then how do we activate a more efficient resource outside of a traditional hospital care setting. When we do that, we lower the total cost of care, but we're also boosting outcomes, which directly ties to our top level aim.
Yep. Yeah, that's great. And I think, very, very interesting, like you said, some of the parallels, while different businesses, but interesting parallels between the different organizations here. And another aspect of data and analytics is also being able to leverage that data to automate specific processes or use automation to generate data for organizations. And so for Tom, I think what would be interesting to hear is sort of how Indico has leveraged automation to create, whether that's streamlined operations or better customer experiences for your clients.
Yeah, and I think that automation broadly has experienced this huge focus in the last 12 months driven partially by the disruption the pandemic has created. And I think customers are looking at automation as a way to sort of harden and strengthen their operational profile. In our case, artificial intelligence is applied to automate these document-based workflows. And I think one of the big learnings in the last, say, 12 to 24 months is a realization that, what AI can and cannot do, or how to think about AI when you're thinking about framing, the ROI around automation. And I think that, maybe 24 months ago, there was this big misconception that AI equals robots, right? That AI can sit down and do the job, instead of the former sort of human-driven process. And that's just not the case. So I think what we try to really push with the customers is to think about AI much more as a bionic arm, right? It's an enhancement. It's still human-centered, but you're driving efficiency by making people in the process, if they could lift 100 pounds yesterday, now they can lift 1,000 pounds. That's a much better analogy for thinking about automation. Unfortunately, automation sort of conveys this notion of well, it's automatic, right? And it's not quite the right word. I think augmentation would have been a better word to describe the segment, but we kind of are where we are in terms of the terminology. But I think that's an important thing we try to get into dialogue with customers early to think about how to frame the ROI.
Yeah, no, that's great. And that, sort of to piggyback on that, at Bell and Howell, Haroon, how have you guys been able to leverage automation to really basically enhance the experience and efficiencies for your customers, again, from your traditional business model?
Yeah, no, I agree with Tom. It's augmenting our field service technicians with automation. So as we focus on improving efficiency of our field service operations, we have worked and we continue to work on automation. Our IoT-enabled remote monitoring allows us to manage over 95% of the service calls remotely on certain type of connected equipment. This is possible because of the algorithms that we have built over the last several years that automatically creates alerts and work orders with automated escalations built in for remote fix or roll the truck, what we call, for on-site repairs when required. This has helped us tremendously in servicing our retail and grocery click and collect machines. Think about grocery, when you order online grocery and go pick up in store, we have to make sure that the temperature is maintained, the doors are closed, etc. And we are able to monitor that in real time and change the temperature settings and monitor the temperature settings in real time from our network operations center. So many of these are made possible with the help of automation, and we are seeing some good results. Paperwork troubleshooting time has been cut by full hour per service call because of the contextual information that we provide whenever we create an alert or a work order. We've also built real-time visualization so that our technicians can proactively identify fleet-level issues, problematic machine, so they can identify and solve problems even before customer knows that there is a problem. So it's an ongoing effort for us, but we have done some good things here in this space of automation or augmentation.
Yeah, that's great. And then on the other side of automation, right? We've talked about, Tom, you talked about AI and some of the sort of potential misconceptions of what AI can do or can't do. But one of the other sort of areas related to AI is machine learning and predictive analytics. And so, Ashish, sort of a question to you: how has your organization enabled your clients to basically use predictive analytics to either make recommendations or make other sorts of predictions leveraging data? Ashish, you're muted there.
Sorry, thank you. Our organization's actually done some really neat work with a Philadelphia-based company, Bay Out of Home Healthcare. They had a couple of problems that we applied predictive analytics to that were able to yield some really good results. The first was in the area of identifying people who were on home health for an extended period of time, but probably should have been on hospice sooner. If you look at a service like hospice, it's a difficult one to kind of talk about, but there's a lot of good benefits to it. The average length of stay is usually 7 days. when the benefit is for 60 to 90 days. So people are getting placed onto hospice way too late in the game. We were able to take algorithms from Medicare and apply them as baseline predictive models, and then train that data, and based on feedback from clinicians, improve the identification rate that ultimately improve that transition to hospice and actually help the family and the individual have a better experience at the end of the day. There's a lot of folks who are just being missed. And so to me, that was a really practical application of predictive analytics. And it was really a journey. I think about it in 3 steps. You start with a baseline predictive model, then based on feedback, you start to train that and you turn it into something that's perhaps a little bit more machine enhanced or machine learning. And when you can create that into a virtuous loop, something that's automatically training, you're on your journey to AI. Oftentimes you need feedback on those types of recommendations. And that's what we've done with our technology. We've allowed field clinicians and other users to be able to provide feedback into the recommendation to create enhanced data that allows us to kind of, tune our models and our algorithms. Another example is working with Horizon on the New Jersey side and Beata, identifying individuals who were trending towards an unnecessary ER visit. And so not waiting to tell you that, Jane Doe is in the emergency department, but telling you that she's got a high probability of ending up there in 3 weeks if new actions aren't taken. So some really neat practical applications of the technology.
Great. Thank you, Ashish. We've got sort of time for, I think, maybe one closing question to, get some final thoughts from each of you. And I think one of the aspects of data that I see with clients that I work with is just everyone wants to leverage data, but getting the organization to truly adopt data-driven decision-making is a different story. So any sort of final thoughts on how, companies can really start to push that adoption of using data to make decisions? And Haroon, if we could start with you.
Sure. I mean, first and foremost, leadership commitment is very important. It should come from the top. People respect what you inspect. So in our case, we have a very supportive CEO who's also a true champion of analytics. Second, it's very important to understand what your goal is when it comes to analytics and what is that you're trying to do with data. We touched upon, all of us touched upon, there's so much data, but what actions are we going to take? What is that we are trying to do with that data? And define, 5 to 7 key performance metrics and start measuring them and talk about why it matters and what we need to do as an organization to improve them. So it's a journey, but this is, an important first step to transform the company into a data-informed organization.
Great, thank you, Haroon. Tom, do you have any final thoughts related to that?
Yeah, similar. I think you have to start at the end and work backwards, right? So the question you need to ask is, what decisions can we improve if we had the right information? And then you have to think about, how do we turn data into information? Because data in and of itself sometimes is not very useful, especially if there's just too much of it. So the feedback we get from customers is, how can you help us understand what data we should be paying attention to? Because once we do that, it becomes information and thus yields, an outcome that affects the business positively.
Great. And then Ashish, any final comments from you as well?
Yeah, I think just to piggyback off of Tom and Haroon's comments, it's really about outcomes at the end of the day. And in healthcare, we have things like the triple and quadruple aim that focus on patient satisfaction, cost, and quality, but really taking an actionable analytics lens. So we talk a lot about return on investment, outcomes, and then how does the actionable analytics ultimately deliver a result that perhaps was elusive over, the subsequent years. So just an intense focus on outcomes over the technology in and of itself, I think is the right starting point.
Yeah. Okay, that is. I want to thank all of you, the panelists, for joining today. We've got a lot of good information, and hopefully everyone who's listening at home can get a lot of value out of the discussion we've had today, and learn how to really activate their data and get value out of it. So. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brian.
I'm Sanjay Sharma, Chief Technology Officer at SCI and the chair of last year's Forum conference. SEI is a leading provider of global investment processing, investment management, investment operations, and technology solutions, which are designed to help corporations, financial institutions, financial advisors, and ultra-high net worth families to create and manage wealth. 2021 marks the second year where we have shifted PHORUM to an all virtual experience. As this global pandemic has led us to innovate our approach to delivering content and insights to our audience, so has the pandemic accelerated innovation in the enterprise. Over 4 sessions, we have seen how data has fueled this accelerated enterprise data journey. Here to recap this journey for us is Peter Coffey, Vice President of Strategic Solutions and Innovation at Salesforce.
Every year, we rely on our PHORUM demo pit contenders to provide a reality check on the slideware and the business plans by bringing us existence proofs of the vision and the talent and the technical capability to create new opportunities. And this year, they did not disappoint. We came into this year's event with a belief that we could explore together the most important differences between the old data processing and the new data science and data as the new oil. And our finalists showed us that the change is not measured by growing volumes or even growing richness and velocity of our data streams, but rather is most defined by a pivot toward insights and recommendations, not just records. Consider the direction taken by Celeri Health and its observation that pain care is not yet a data-driven disease. Chronic pain burdens economies and lives more than heart disease, cancer, or diabetes. But the remedies used to treat it today can be traced to drugs and practices that have been with us for more than 2 centuries. Using data to do more than record office visits and prescriptions, rather to pursue Celeri's idea that every encounter can be treated like a clinical study is an example of the idea that data should illuminate rather than merely accumulate. Another theme that comes up in many of my conversations with Salesforce customers is the understanding that some things about the future are not predictions, that having data about what is and having powerful models of what that means will happen next let us plan for a future that is already a certainty, even if it can't yet be observed. A perfect example is demographic change. We know as pretty much a certainty that we will have more people living longer lives with greater physical capacity and intellectual capacity to contribute through multiple careers. We've talked about this for decades, but the structure and the resource limits on traditional education made reskilling and upskilling difficult to achieve in any systematic way. Demo Pit finalist GoCoach turns data streams from training into feedback loops that measure what works, combined with marketplace capabilities to match needs with resources so that far greater efficiencies can be achieved. Another future that's now is in the area of retail, where companies that could bring their 2025 forward by 5 years into 2020 were able to achieve impressive results in addressing both everyday needs and particular pandemic necessities. In some respect, retail opportunities actually grew during 2020 as people with different patterns of time use and different limits on their social lives started to explore new interests. As we accelerate into pandemic endgame, those customers aren't going to accept a return to 2019's relative poverty of convenience and engagement. They're going to combine new, higher expectations with renewed ability to shop in brick-and-mortar spaces, creating a surge of demand for improved retail management capability, like what we saw from Demo Pit finalist Sweft. Working across the traditional silos of buying, marketing, and selling to create a real 360-degree view of product is something that addresses a critical need for a successful transition out of lockdown. I don't know if the companies that I've mentioned will be on the podium this year, since I'm recording these comments without seeing final results, but I picked them as examples of where data can take us and also what that requires of us. The kind of personal information being handled by Celeri demands the kind of attention to data as the new responsibility that we discussed on PHORUM Day 1. The concierge experience that customers will demand from retailers going forward suggests demands on technologies like Sweft that recognize the role of the customer as producer and owner of data about lifestyle and interests, with companies on notice that they may need to pay what that data is worth rather than merely harvesting it at will. We discussed some of these considerations on day 2. Further, the transformation of ongoing training and education from open-loop content delivery to closed-loop measurement and refinement of personal learning strategies at GoCoach is in line with our Day 4 themes of activating the energy of data. And all of these things can only succeed at scale if we respect and meet the demands of data management, including the development of new data models that share both responsibility and ownership on distributed ledgers, like blockchain, that can accelerate processes while elevating trust. Our Day 3 discussions added depth concerning those considerations. That's what we hope to bring you in this year's forum, our second all-virtual event, and perhaps we can look forward to combining the best aspects of our pandemic forum events with some chances to see each other in real life next year. Thank you for the chance to be part of this community once again, and please, stay safe as we head into what's to come.
Hello, I'm Alan Bourne, Director at Fairmount Partners, a presenting sponsor of Forum and co-chair of the Demo Pit Selection Committee. Over the last 2 weeks, you've watched pitches from our 9 incredible Demo Pit companies. Now we're just minutes away from announcing this year's Best in Show winner. But first, we want to give you insight into the Demo Pit selection and judging process. Here with me now in our virtual green room is this year's Demo Pit's judges panel. Eddie Brinson, an associate at Mission OG, Elizabeth Feidler, Vice President at Noro Mosley, Dan Koval, Corporate Initiative Manager at Bentley Systems, and Allison Williams, Principal at Newark Venture Partners. We're also joined by my Demo Pit co-chair, Sean Dowling. Hello, Sean, and all the judges. Eddie, let's start with you. Can you give our audience some insight into this year's selection and judging process?
Sure. Thanks, Alan. This year, we received over 50 applications for our 9 presentation slots. Nominations came in from across the PAC community, from trusted members and partners of the steering committee. This panel reviewed the company recordings and pitch decks, as well as the company profiles in the PAC virtual event platform.
Thanks, Eddie. Allison, can you tell us about the criteria the judges used to select Best in Show?
Yes, absolutely. We assess companies in 3 main areas: strength of the product and attractiveness to enterprise buyers. So does it address a pain point for the enterprise? Is the solution clear with meaningful innovation and differentiation? Secondly, alignment with the forum themes. And lastly, presentation. Is the founder able to describe the pain point and the solution in a clear and compelling way?
Thank you. Elizabeth, what were your overall impressions of this year's lineup?
Hey, Alan. I know as a judging panel, we were very impressed by the caliber of the applicants this year. All of the companies were clearly solving a real pain point in the market. And further, the presentations were really well done. The founders and CEOs did a great job of articulating their company and the mission they're trying to solve. It was a lot of fun judging the companies.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Dan, this is your second year representing Bentley as a Demo Pit sponsor and judge. How does this year's lineup measure up?
Hey, Alan, thank you so much. And thanks for having me back for a second year. Yeah, last year's Demo Pit was absolutely incredible. And I was astounded with the caliber of the content and the quality of the companies that came forward. And this year, again, just absolutely blown away and impressed by the quality of these companies and the way they're innovating enterprise technology. I can't wait to see how all of these companies continue to grow.
The biggest challenge we've had at War for Good, especially since the Enterprise Awards where we won Startup of the Year, is product market fit. We thought we had it at our initial start. The genesis of the company at the beginning was personal safety. Soon after we finished manufacturing, we actually found out we did not have it. But what we're really excited about is we feel like we've solved for that challenge, especially with the pivot to workplace safety. Over 42,000 hotels need our solution. They do not have a choice. They have to choose a location-based panic button. And in a compliance-driven industry where cost is the #1 component that vendors or hotels look for, we're really excited to be able to be that low-cost provider?
Yeah, so for the past 2 years, we've been in operation, and our biggest challenge has been the workflow into the clinics. And so what we did was we integrated with every EMR, because we understand within a busy clinic, you can't ask them to do something else. So our platform works simply where you make a referral to LabCorp, you make a referral to Celeri. And when that referral goes out, it goes and creates an assessment for the patient to complete, and it goes back into the EMR. It was critically important because it was a big friction point with clinics worried about having to do and take more action.
Well, I think the biggest challenge starting from 2018 was being able to leave corporate life and not having a paycheck as I started to build this. So that was difficult. I put a lot of money in, and we want to be able to see a return even quicker. But with taking that leap of faith, and making this side gig into a reality, has built a very strong company where we're able to raise capital.
People did not understand when we started in 2017, what does ownership of data mean? As we progressed through time and more privacy regulations around the world started establishing that as law, people noticed it much more. So the timing was very good from our perspective.
Our biggest challenge is raising money, as most. Without the money, we can't do much, but we have been able to do a lot with our bootstrap funds of over $400,000. I think that Philly is a growing space for raising money. And I know that there's a significant effort being put out there right now to help small businesses as well as woman-owned and minority-owned businesses to raise money. So I think that we are in the right space at the right time and in the right location.
The biggest challenges at Pliant is normalizing a corporation's what we call APIs, or programmatic interfaces. Those are the makeup of the action blocks that we use. That's the basis of the entire company, actually, is our ability to quickly and automated create those blocks that users drag and drop.
Users tend to like to stick with what they're comfortable with, regardless how painful that is. So they realize that their spreadsheets are causing them a lot of aggravation and taking up a lot of their time that could be used on business driving activities, but it's what they know. So with Sweft, part of how we are overcoming that challenge is the fact that our product grid, which is the main workspace for the users, intentionally looks and feels like Excel, so that it's something that's comfortable and familiar, but yet gives them way more efficiency and allows them to focus on business driving activities versus just redundant data entry.
So the biggest challenge for us since we started the company has been building this hardware. This was an idea on a piece of paper, and building new medical technologies and devices that are ready for this day and age is a challenge. And starting that entirely from scratch is an even bigger challenge, convincing investors and stakeholders that this is a product that is not only needed, but essential for providing the best care possible to a patient population that desperately needs it.
The greatest challenge that we have experienced at Strategikon was shifting to a customer-focused orientation and shifting from a clinical business operations focus within a service company to a SaaS company. So bringing this service mentality into Strategikon to ensure that we deliver utmost delight to our customers, and also learn about SaaS technology, business dynamics. That's been a learning curve and also a joy to learn.
Thank you to our judges for your participation in Forum and involvement with this process. I'm now going to turn it back over to Sean to announce the 2021 Demo Pit Best in Show.
Thanks, Alan. I'm honored to be here this morning with our 9 amazing Demo Pit participants to announce the Best in Show for Forum 2021. Before I do so, we'll have each of the participants just wave as I say your name. We have Celeri Health, Envision to Be Well, GoCoach, Pliant, Roar for Good, Strados Labs, Strategikon Pharma, Sweft, and Verif-y. I want to thank each of you again for your participation this year. We had an amazingly competitive round with some really incredible companies. And I'm here now to announce the winner, which is, I'll do a quick drum roll, Sweft. So congratulations to Sweft. And I'll turn it over to Julie to say a few words.
Thank you very much. On behalf of myself and my two co-founders, Michael Robinson and Rajana Sharma, we are very excited to be this year's winner and would like to thank PACT and the forum sponsors for giving us this opportunity, and all the best to everyone in the group on their future success. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you, Julie. Congrats again to Sweft, and thank you again to all of our incredible participants this year. You will continue the amazing legacy of the Forum Demo Pit, and look forward to seeing you in the future.
That's a wrap on the 2021 Forum Demo Pit. Remember that you can connect with our winner and all our Demo Pit participants via our interactive Forum community platform. For information on how to access the Forum community, visit forumphilly.com.
Congratulations to our Demo Pit Best in Show winner and to all of this year's presenting companies. This concludes the 2021 Forum Conference Series, our 10th annual Forum Conference. Thanks to all who have joined us for all 4 hours of this virtual conference series. And remember, you can go back and watch any past Forum content, as well as connect with fellow attendees, speakers, and Demo Pit and Showcase companies, all in our Forum community app and desktop platform. Reach out to our team via the Forum website for information on how to access at forumphilly.com. Once again, I'd like to recognize our Forum presenting sponsors, Fairmount Partners and Anexanet, for their leadership in this year's program. Thank you to all of our Forum sponsors, and to you, our audience and Forum community, for your engagement. Remember to join us immediately following this broadcast in our virtual networking lounge via the link in the live chat or conference agenda. I'll see you there or see you next year, hopefully in person, at Forum 2022.